I guess probably we should do a roll call because I forget that every time, but anyway. This is that. We're going to share the big bill with this one.
Another packet?
Just this one. I'm trying not to think about it.
Okay.
That's why I really put on. Okay, looks like we at least have a quorum, so we're good. He's doing what I always do, don't worry. Okay, moving on to, everybody had a chance to look at the minutes from January, and I just have a couple of changes under 4C. It was actually Carrie that moved the motion. Yeah. Yeah. And then under 9 other business, it is Melissa made the motion to adjourn.
Oh, cool.
You
Can you capture that, Amy?
What's that?
Are you able to capture those changes?
Oh, no, I didn't hear, sorry.
Okay, all right. 4C, it says, motion to table was made, it was actually made by Carrie Snow.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and under the last one, Melissa made the motion to adjourn. 10, number 10.
We've got to take a chair out.
Yeah. With those, does anybody else have any changes? Okay. I need a motion to approve the minutes.
Sure, I'll make that motion.
Carrie? Glenn? All in favor? Opposed? Minutes pass. Okay. Public invited to be heard. Assuming there's nobody. Organizational updates.
Sure. Let's see. So we've had a couple of changes in our property management side. We had Kat McNeil resigned her position to seek out other opportunities at Village on Main. So right now Jackie and Quincy are covering Village while we hire for that position. And then we've had a couple property managers give notice to seek out job opportunities as well. And so those are pending. And so I'll just let you know that we're trying to hire as quickly as we can, and once that's all finalized, we can report out specifics. But so, you know, this happens, and all of them were to seek out job opportunities or for personal reasons to be able to handle some personal business. And so I think that we have a solid management team, and we'll get them hired as quickly as possible, and I think we'll be able to manage. Any other organizational stuff, Harold? Kept it pretty brief. Okay.
This Harold.
So I just have a question for you, and it could probably come up way back here somewhere, but on the True North, is that what that place is called?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. Did you guys consider the possibility of putting a childcare center over there, or is that not even something to be considered?
So this is that would be a standalone situation. In this case, the development partner, that's not in their wheelhouse. And also the child care center, the reason we were able to put it in a cent is that we can combine it and bring the financing together. This would have to be standalone since it's home ownership, and that was not something that we looked at for this site. But we do have, there is a lot of movement on child care centers that I know Harold could speak to more, happening on the east side of town. And then there is one, the Mom's Peak Learning Center is in the vicinity as well. But that was not something we could look at for this one. It's kind of a different animal.
Where is
It's just going to be just south of Costco.
we thought about putting in one of those library boxes and take the whole unit.
Right now, we just have excavators in the ground. I think that is definitely a possibility. It would probably be a down the road thing. Right now, we're focusing on getting the infrastructure complete and making a sales process for, it's going to be a portal so that people can log in and try and get into the system, because we think that it's going to be more demand than we have units available, or that's the hope. We're planning for that. But that is certainly great stuff to consider for once we're actually getting the neighborhood going. Remember, it's 185 units, and 55 of those 52 are getting built right now. So it will be a multi-year process to get the whole neighborhood built out. So we have lots of opportunities to think about amenities.
Documentation, all that's going to look like, and information about it.
Sure.
So Molly, of those 52 that are getting built right now, how many of them are going to be for employee?
24 out of the full 185 are, so if we have 24 that want to go right up front, then it could be that, or spaced out. I think spaced out is what we're assuming and actually hoping for, just so that it's not all city so concentrated, everyone's going to be neighbors.
What kind of housing is it?
Yeah, they're different type, yeah.
Molly, what kind of housing is it? Single-family home, housing?
It's a combination of single family and townhome row house style. So let me share the website so you can see the product. I don't like new Google, it puts it on the side. Just give me my regular Google search, thank you.
Here's a change of this.
Okay, so here's our webpage. This. So the first thing is the interest list here pops up, but let's look at which is good. They updated the website to make sure the interest list was very much prevalent. First thing you see. So here's one of our smallest types of units that are standalone. And then here's an 1,100 square foot standalone home. 1360. Almost 1,500. 1476. We don't have any of the townhome product on in the imagery yet.
Can you go back to the one that has all the trees and everything, that particular picture? Is that actually this, or is it Prospect? Because it looks a lot like Prospect. Is that what this is going to look like?
Well, that's downtown.
Yeah.
I think they're just talking about the vicinity to community.
Oh, okay.
But there is one. Is one rendering. I just gotta figure out where it is. Here we go. This is the rendered imagery. So you can see some townhome products in the back there, but it's going to be a mix throughout. The middle, there's like feels like a green, the open space in the middle that's really for recreational. It's not a formal park, it's more of a mini park in the center of the community. Oh, there's one. That's right. Can't see this one yet. Okay, is there any other questions on that?
It's a nice mix. It looks like a nice mix.
Pretty excited.
Before we go to the meeting, date and time, did you have anything else?
That's it.
Okay. So I went back through and I checked, kind of went through what we talked about last time. And so Josh is the one that has a problem with Tuesdays, and I'm I'm not quite sure, Harold, with what your situation is, but I think afternoons would maybe be worse for you than mornings if we were to stay with Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday afternoon is probably worse for me.
As a council, I just
yeah.
want to pump up into anything.
But I mean, I can make it work. I mean, I can just flip stuff over, so. I mean, if it's easier for the board.
Well, right now, we all seem to be pretty good as far as coming to this meeting. This is what I got from my notes last weekend, or last month. Hopefully, we're correct. So as far as Wednesday goes now, Melissa, you said if we do an afternoon, it has to end by 4, which is not a problem. Josh said he was okay after 11. Molly, you said that LHA has staff meeting on Wednesday, which kind of puts you guys out of the morning. I showed Glenn, Jenna, Carrie, okay with Wednesday. Thursday, I show that there are a lot of people that are not going to be able to do a Thursday. So I really think Thursday is out. So we're down to, do we want to stay with Tuesday morning? Or do we actually want to try and change it to Wednesday? Realizing that most people right now seem to be able to come Tuesday.
We had highlighted, it's on the agenda as well, we had put as the Tuesday 1 to 3 as a possible time slot.
And we just, for Harold, we went for the best thing. And Josh has got a problem with Tuesdays.
I mean, Wednesday at work, if we could just change the staff meeting from Wednesday to Tuesday.
The staff meetings are actually Tuesdays at 3. What didn't work is Wednesday, is I don't typically come in because I have to flex the schedule for school late start. But otherwise, that's it.
Well, on Tuesday in the morning seems to be okay because everybody has a meeting for all of this time. So, I mean, basically, we just need to decide if we're going to stay on Tuesday or do we actually want to change. And if we stay, I think I would, and this is just my opinion, 1/7 of the opinion here. I think we need to go back to 2 hours because particularly today, the agenda seems to be really full and I'm not sure.
So if we stay here, we go back to 9 to 11 and Josh would no longer be.
Well, you really can't even do it now from 9:30 to 11. Yeah. Which, that's the thing. I need somebody to talk besides me, so.
Okay, I'll talk. I really want Molly there, honestly. It's going to be easier. I mean, if you're Wednesday doing flex stuff, I don't think you want to do just that. If we've already kind of got a time that works here. So I would be inclined to stay on Tuesday mornings from 9 to 11. And I mean, I wish we could make something work with Josh. Like, I really like him. I really want him to be here. But I don't know, has he shared any more information with you, Arlene, in the last month? Because I know last month we're kind of like, well, we haven't seen him for a few months, but he might have some more info about.
He just said that he's tried really hard to try and share. Due to the last few meetings, it's just not working out.
Okay.
So he has some big staff meetings apparently in his new position. And of course, that's, pretty, yeah. And I hate to see, us not have him, but sometimes it's kind of the way things work out.
If you were to look at Wednesdays, what are the times that you were looking at?
Well, Josh could do it in the afternoon. We would have to do it before 4 to accommodate Melissa. So, again, we're kind of after. And you guys meet on, and you're not here, but I agree with Carrie. I think that you need to be here. You're critical to.
I mean,
because if for some reason I can't make it.
Yeah. We talked about I could attempt to move things. I could do virtual, but if I'm running the meeting virtually, it's not amazing.
Yeah.
So I would have to talk to my family and figure out our plans.
Arlene,
But
it seems like no matter what we do, if we change it, we're impacting somebody. So, we're the right thing to do.
So I guess what I need is a motion to let's do it one way or another. Let's figure out what we're doing, and then at least we'll have solved that problem.
You make the motion to sign. I'll make a motion to go to 2 hours on Tuesday mornings.
from Montana. Glenn and Melissa in a second. Any further discussion?
I guess my own discussion is can like just let Josh know. I mean, I totally respect that he's been out there.
I've been in touch with him, just, so that you guys know, I haven't totally left him hanging out there. And he's very nice about what we're doing, so we're trying. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, so I will let you know. So we're back to 9 to 11 on Tuesday mornings.
Molly, when we have the board meeting, we need to talk to them about, see what Josh lands. I'm assuming he's gonna resign, but then open it up.
Yeah.
But for a lender. And I'm not sick, I'm just 4 weeks into whatever this is.
And the weather probably doesn't happen a lot. Okay, development and project updates.
Sure. Sorry, I'm still thinking. I'm thinking of a way to make it work on Wednesdays. And it's only once a month. I figure, well, you've already made the motion, so we'll skip it for there.
We passed it.
We'll follow up later if necessary. Okay. Sorry. I don't want to open and pull up. Okay. General development updates. We are kind of in the same boat, I'd say, as last month, where we're really trying to get the things that we have in progress cleanly either completed, like Village, or really just wrapped up nice and closed out. Ascent is under construction, it's going smoothly, and then we're really looking towards planning for what's next. We had been looking in depth at like how to make a middle income project work, and that might still be on the horizon, but that's taken up some time just really digging in and seeing if that is something that could work in LHA's business. And then we are digging in now on the Hearthstone and Lodge. I would say that there's some interesting movement happening in the world of affordable out there in other places in town. A lot of market rate developers are calling and asking about how to morph their projects into affordable or attainable deals. The market rate stuff is just challenging right now with interest rates, and when there's opportunities for incentives or subsidy, they're exploring that. So we're getting a lot of calls right now. Some of them are further along than others. Some have affordable experience, some don't. So we're fielding some calls to other developers right now, just giving them kind of the lay of the land. So we'll see what kind of happens on the horizon. It's interesting though. I think that I'll leave the development updates at that for now, since we do have, like I said, a good sized agenda, unless there's any questions. We're in transition is the motto.
Okay. Items for input. HCB administrative plan.
So we'll pick this up.
I can pick this up. Every year we update our admin plan to include any changes that we want to make with our policies, or if there's any federal regulations that have changed, and if we need to develop new policies. This one has a lot of changes with the HOTMA rules coming into play.
What is HOTMA, Tracy?
Yeah, what is HOTMA?
HOTMA is the Housing Opportunity Through Modernization Act that went into effect in 2016, and they're just having a hard time getting it going. We're not under the new rules, but they will be here soon. So, right, the admin plan addresses that. So we have chapters on what we're doing now, and then like 6A, 6B, a chapter on when it changes, how we would be administering it. Since they keep pushing it aside, that was really the only way that I felt we could address both rules. So that's most of the changes is because of HOTMA. They also are changing the inspection rules from using the housing quality standards, which is the HQS, to a more in-depth inspection called Inspire. That too has not gone into effect for the voucher program. And so you'll see chapters A and B on that too. So we'll continue to follow the housing quality standards until Inspire comes and they go live with that. So some of the changes under HOTMA for the voucher program would include if somebody had more than $100,000 in assets, including real estate, they would not qualify for the voucher program. If they had a home, if they owned a home and it was livable, they would not be able to get on the program. They would be not qualified. But again, there's some exceptions. If it's an elderly person who can't take care of it and they've rented it out, something like that, we can work with. Some other, so the amount of assets has gone up from 5,000 to 50,000. So we don't look at any asset as far as income from the asset if it's under 50,000. Before it was 5,000. What that does is it frees up a lot of time for staff verifying all the checking accounts and assets. Let's see, the other things that have changed is every elderly person on the program gets an automatic $400 deduction from their annual income, and that has increased to $520. And then, that being said, the amount, right now we take 3% of their income, and anything over that, that they spend on medical, we can give them a deduction off of their income, and that's going up to 10%. So it will be anything over 10% of their income that they spend out of pocket for medical will now be a deduction. That's kind of the highlight of the HOTMA rules. The Inspire, the Inspire, the inspection rules, it's just more comprehensive. They look at more, in some areas it's going to be more lenient, in other areas it's going to be more stringent. They've changed the rule for smoke detectors to be tamper-proof or hardwired. So that's one of the things that we're administering now. That went into effect right away. The other stuff, it's just a formula that the inspector goes through to determine if it passes or fails. So that's the highlights.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Do you guys have any questions?
I'll just add that, so at next Tuesday's board meeting, we're going to have a public comment session on this, but then they're going to be considering it for approval at the March 18th meeting.
Okay. Tracy, I have a couple of clarification questions.
Okay.
Okay, in chapter 2, where you're talking about added examples of the reasonable accommodation, besides what we allow now, what would be a reasonable accommodation that might be new? As an
I
added,
think it just set up some examples, which doesn't cover everything. Reasonable accommodation would be if somebody in the voucher program couldn't do their annual recertification on time because they have a disability that doesn't allow them to follow through with stuff. That could be a reasonable accommodation. Allowing them a pet under the voucher program, it doesn't. I mean, it's up to the property owner, of course, but by us allowing them to have a pet, we then can give them medical deductions for the care of that pet, if it's for a medical reason. Other than that, a lot of times we get reasonable accommodations for people to get a higher bedroom voucher, such as going from a 1-bedroom to a 2-bedroom because they have medical equipment or they can aid. We don't have to do a lot of the, under the voucher program, a lot of the reasonable accommodations for modifications of the building. That would go through the property owner. So we're kind of limited under the voucher program.
So, I was reading some stuff last night. When are we required to make this change?
Oh, we're prepared to do it
No,
as soon as they're,
when is HUD requiring us to make this change?
What was it, July?
July. It's July.
well, they're saying July. The problem that they're having is right now, we have to submit all of our information to a HUD secure system called PIC. And they are going from that system to a new system. And they can't get that system ready. And so they just keep pushing back the date of implementation until they can get that done. I think right now they're saying for properties, they're saying by June 30th, they have to be under HUD. As far as HCV, it's just a waiting game. I'm guessing that, from what I understand, they're not even close to getting the new system up. So we'll see.
The only reason I ask is,
We're ready for it.
well, the only reason I ask is, I think looking at what's happening at the national level and what changes are going to be drawn down in terms of what we know. So Scott Turner, I think has been confirmed as the HUD secretary. And so, like, he's been very vocal about you shouldn't force landlords to have to take someone who has a voucher and things like that. So my only question is, we get this, but I think we've seen enough turmoil of multiple agencies right now that I think we just need to watch really closely what's going to happen, because it's possible that we make this change and we're making changes in 6 months because of other stuff that's going on.
When I tell people that I'm on this board, that's the number one thing that people ask. It's like, what are we doing to prepare and just be as organized as we can be? Because that's all we can do, right?
Yeah.
To sort of approach the deadlines as we see now. And
Yeah.
but if anybody has any new things to add, it's helpful because I do my best to try to see how organized like we are and what we're going forward with. But it's a good point that comes up.
A lot of the changes are required to have our computer system updated. So that was one of the reasons they were putting it off, because they didn't really give the software agencies time to update the system. Ours is updated. We can change it at any time. we're just waiting for them to pull the lever. And I'm sure if there's more changes come down, then it's gonna delay everything.
So I have a couple
But
of,
in,
oh, sorry.
but in the admin plan, I've kind of developed it, so it does have what we're doing now, and then when it changes, what we'll do. So we will continue to do what we're doing until further notice. Come on.
I have a couple of older housing voucher holders, and they sent out the notice of the changes of I got it as the property owner, so like 2 months ago, at my last inspection, I had a new tenant move in with a boiler voucher in November, and they were already requiring like the hardwired, because they had to do some changes. So I know that they're already doing all of these things already.
Yeah, there was a couple things that they required happen right away, and the smoke detector was one of them. And there's a couple other things, can't remember right off the top of my head.
It has to be hardwired with a battery backup, and it has to have the case. You have to put the case around it, so they can't. So whatever. That's the first thing they do is take the smoke detectors down.
Right.
They'll figure it out.
Well, I think that's the challenge, though. I mean, just organization. Now, I will slide up to 40,000 feet. I think organizationally, we're really preparing ourselves for. There will be changes. The question is, what are those changes going to be, and how do we adapt to those changes? It wouldn't surprise me, based on what I've seen with Scott Turner and some of the other things, you may see changes that are actually probably more landlord friendly. And what we're talking about, because he's done a lot of affordable housing, I think, in the Dallas area, and so he just generally tends to side to more landlord friendly. I think he's tended to side a little bit to, I think he's made the comment, he says welfare can be very dangerous if not used appropriately. And so I think what you'll see kind of from him is probably more landlord friendly, more focused on outcomes and not allowing behaviors of things that you've seen in the system that allows things to go on. And it'll be interesting to see what happens, because I think there will be a tension then between on the HCV side, HCV rules and state law.
And on that note, I'm reviewing state bills as they come through, and many of them will probably get amended before they even make it further. But right now, looks like a lot of clarification of the stuff that got approved last year that was tenant friendly, like more living in it and what needs to tweak to make that actually make any sense. Some of them still don't make sense yet. And my recommendation is modify this language. This doesn't make any sense. But so far, the state legislation that I've seen is still tenant heavy and just clarifications. Nothing.
Yeah.
So that is very possible.
And I mean, every budget in the first Trump administration that they proposed, I think, proposed a 20% reduction in funding. And so, but I think it won't show itself in the HCV side. I think you'll see it in other programs, like the home programs for homelessness and things like that. I think you'll see that there versus HCV, because when they issued the first memo, that was the first thing they were tracking, was direct aid programs, so Medicare, Medicaid, HCV, and things like that. That was the first thing they were tracking, so I'm not sure we'll see it there, other than the rules in terms of what you have to do. But I think the other HUD program, something's going to take a hit in this, and we'll see. But to your point, just so kind of what we're doing in all of our programs, I'm getting an inventory of things, and what was submitted when, what's under contract, what's not under contract, and starting to set a tiered approach of, well, we're in the middle of Coffin Street, so if this starts dropping, then I gotta take the local funding match from here and slide it into here to finish it, and then we'll reverse out certain projects that we're not gonna fund, and we're gonna have to do that all over. Then what we have to be careful with, and this is where we have to have some conversations with the Housing Authority Board and the City Council, that everybody's watching, is what are the conditions that could be inserted into contracts for grant funding that require us to do certain things. And, you know, the big thing right now is the Department of Governmental Efficiency, and I have questions coming in right now from council saying, do they have access into our systems? And the answer is no, because almost everything we do, we upload into their system. But can they ask for access into our system? Today the answer is no. But those are things we're now starting to work through because, there's just we don't know a lot, but every administration changes, and you just have to adapt to the change or don't take the funding, because that's the leverage is the funding. And so we're going to need to also be ready to be more resilient locally in certain things.
I would say the first day where the grant funding was rescinded was a scary day for us because it was on the 28th of January. We were about to cut checks to landlords for the HCB program because they were due the first. And so if we cut those checks and then we did not get reimbursed from HUD, what were we going to do? So we actually delayed them for the moment, and then we got them out. But that's the trickle-down effects of what that actually looks like on the ground.
And probably the rule for Kendra going forward is the checks will be cut when we get the money from the feds. Because we also can't destabilize it to the point of making these checks and then not having money for the other stuff. And I don't know how the places that cut the checks even though they didn't have the money did it, because it's a pretty big gamble.
So how does that work? You don't cut the voucher checks to the landlords?
Jill, I think she was.
Yeah, so I'll usually see it in the bank on the first, but if the first falls on a weekend, I won't see it in the bank. I can see it as a pending transaction coming in for the HUD money on that Monday, and that's what happened. I saw it come on Monday. We had the checks ready, we had the ACH ready to go, but I didn't pull the trigger until we saw the money come in, because it would be a good $700,000 that would go around here. And if we didn't get the money, then it would have been LHA funding out of their general fund balance to fund that.
See, there's
don't pay the landlords, what does that do to the tenant?
So that was the fear at the time.
There's a problem.
Is okay. So if that happens, and if it wasn't rescinded, if that happened for a period of months while they all figured everything out, then you got a bigger problem on your hands. You're going to have evictions for non-payment, or whether and then you've got all those people with no housing, and the problem balloons and balloons and balloons. So that was the biggest fear on that day.
And there's no way to cure it, because within all of these contracts, and Kendra and Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong, there's an appropriation clause, I think, in all of these contracts, both for the receiver and for the landlord. And so it's in the language, and so technically what they could do is to say, we're not appropriating this money, and so there's no method to cure other than a legislative fix with Congress, because when you receive, it's kind of like Tabor here, and a lot of things that have a Tabor touch, we go subject to annual appropriations, which means if we don't appropriate it, we don't do it. Then you build that into the contract. Well, they've done the same thing. So technically they could withhold the money And if we paid it out of the general fund, there's no requirement for them to reimburse that money. That's the danger. Yes.
From the city standpoint.
Well, and one of
On the
the
other side,
things that we found, I think it was the next day, could have been the day that the notice came down, was that rental assistance was not one of the things that was going to end.
But then our HUD rep said, wait and see.
They
So it was
didn't know,
very,
yeah.
they didn't know, they were trying to still interpret the letter that came out. It's like,
All in all, my workload is gonna go way up if this happens.
I think everybody's workload is going, because, you know, what we're getting from our various connections, and I don't know if, there's definitely a fear motivation from federal employees right now. I mean, if you look at all the federal employees that have been furloughed and all of these issues, and so trying to decipher, is this a fear related to that, or is this a fear related to what they know in the cuts, or what they've been told, is really hard at this point. But yeah, you just kind of look at things that are going on, and you're kind of, you just have to be ready to pivot in a heartbeat.
So, well, kind of along those same lines, I attended a meeting the other day with some Boulder County people from Aging Services over there, and of course, they're very concerned about funding. So, should major things be cut, what would maybe and what would really affect our people would be Meals on Wheels, Cultivate, which provides shopping or rides, home health care services, all those kinds of things, which would would have a major impact on our people. So it's a little confusing right now for everybody.
Yeah, and then at the state level and the local level, you have the headwinds of the funding changes that were, some of it came with property tax changes, some of it's showing itself potentially in sales tax collections. And so if you see the state budget, they're, how many hundreds of millions short? See some, yeah. And so you look at it, and you look at our budget, we faced that last year, and honestly, I'm preparing myself for another bad year this year. Hopefully we've structured it where it won't be a bad year, but so the problem starts getting, it just expands because you don't necessarily have the funding to fill the voids. You saw that with the Boulder County. They couldn't continue existing programs because of the loss of funding. And so, for me, Molly and I have talked about this. We've been noodling a project that everyone tied in here because I think it's a good fit. We've been noodling a project in terms of how we look at housing generally and projects that we build. And we were exploring an opportunity that was presented to us that would have been affordable and attainable. The project was so far down the road that doing what we needed in it to secure like a moral obligation from the city side and other things, we just kept adding millions of dollars every time we find something. But I think what we learned in this is we can do it if you can really start with a clean side and structure it the way you want to and take these things into account. I really think as a housing authority, we're going to have to slide into this world similar to what BHP does, where you look at a truly inclusive mixed development that has affordable, income restricted attainable, and non-income restricted units to set the financing model to where it'll fund itself. But that mix we're seeing does actually generate a lot of revenue over time. And so you create these other revenue sources to kind of reduce your dependency on other things. so you can stabilize yourself internally. And I think seeing everything happening now, it is probably something we need to look at, because if we would have had something like that, let's say theoretically on the front end, on developer fees, you get, Molly, what do we have on the front end modeling on developer fees, a couple $1 million?
In our projections, budget
Yeah.
projections, yes. Kendra can help us on that in terms of which, like for 25?
No, the 121 project.
Oh,
There's a couple of
Developer
million
fees.
on the front end.
yes, because ours was 20%. So that would be, I think it was in the ballpark of 2 million.
2 million.
I'll be right back. I gotta get my power cord.
And then, I got it too. And then, when we started looking at, once you hit stabilization, the revenue stream went from like 400,000, it went to 800,000, and went to $1 million, and then went in excess of $1 million annually. After management fees were being paid, an incentive management fee, so there was still a lot of revenue coming in the other side. So for me, it's pretty clear that kind of stabilizes the housing authority. By default, stabilizes the city, because it gives us some flexibility in the money that we're putting in to affordable and attainable. If you can generate that, that gives us some flexibility in the general fund side. But we're gonna have to start thinking about that, because traditional LIHTC projects do not generate ongoing revenue like you need. And I think that's why housing authorities have traditionally suffered, is because they're relying on that traditional LIHTC model, which doesn't necessarily work. And when you look at the private companies that we partner with, they do a mix. So they have some market rate here, they have some LIHTC here, and they're balancing their overall portfolio for resiliency, financial resiliency. And I just think we're gonna have to do that, because we need to get more focused on controlling our own destiny versus relying on federal and state governments to do that. And that's just kind of my thought, but I wanted to mention that to you all, because I think I'm gonna mention it to the board as well.
Makes sense.
Any questions on that?
We'll just let you keep us informed.
It's very interesting.
Sure. Molly, do you have any more?
That is good for now.
Okay.
I'm
Okay,
waiting for a restart to get ready for the next item.
2024 accomplishments and goals.
That would be me. My computer's starting to show its age. It did not make it even just over an hour, or less than an hour. All right, let me pull this up online. So I'm gonna want to zoom. This is the largest I could get it on paper. We're doing the meeting as well. All right, so these are the goals and accomplishments that we have reported on every year since 2022, when they were put in place by the LHA board. And zoom, if possible. So really, when these were created in 2022, this really was more of it's very granular, because we were in the midst of rescue mode, is what I've been calling it. We think that as you'll see when we go through this, these are a lot of accomplishments that happened. There's still work to be done, for sure, that's shown on here, but generally, we've made a lot of headway, and we're gonna be looking for more than what's here soon. And so this is a message that we're going to convey to the board as well. But in terms of talking about what our goals were, we had 9. This first goal is really about communication with LHA residents and quality of life. The communication was a major struggle at the time in 2022, and it was a culture change that we needed both with our tenants and with staff. And so that is what we have been working on since 2022, and I'd say this is not nearly as much of a concern from our residents. We've implemented a lot of practices that have improved communication over the years. So I feel pretty good that we have made headway here. So I don't want to, we could be here for hours if I dig into anything, but just going over kind of the bigger areas. What we've done is the coffee and conversations are very popular, and we do those quarterly now at all properties and monthly at the Suites and Zinnia. And then we've done resident engagements specifically at the properties where they have something big and special going on. So we did them at the Suites when Zinnia was coming on board to make sure everybody understood what was happening. We did them at Village all through 2024 because of construction, and making sure that they're aware of everything that's going on and we can listen to issues that they had. And then on the internal side, especially because we had a lot of new staff come on in 2024, we went over the city's cultural attributes at staff meetings to make sure that everyone knows the culture that we want to build and maintain and what our expectations are for how we treat each other and the people we serve. So I think really a focus area for 2025 is to keep going on this. And then we do want to still, we were not able to in 24, do our new resident handbook. That's really more of a warm welcome and providing a lot of information on resources and that type of thing. So that's something we want to do in 25. We held a lot of engagements with residents at the properties specifically. We had educational activities provided by various providers. We had the research opportunities in partnership with CU Denver, and just really did a lot of work on resident engagement this year. I would say that we want to continue that. It's been super successful, and I do think that it's resulted in a sea change in terms of how the residents see the LHA and just keeping people happy. What we would like to do is work with Recovery Cafe to see if there's capacity and ability to expand the recovery support services, both at the Suites and at Zinnia. So that's something we want to keep an eye on for 25. And then just keep an eye out for other organizations. Be Ready Longmont is one we've talked about because LHA's emergency response plan is quite old. And that's something that we could look at doing, and then that would also help out residents, work with Sustainable Resilient Longmont, bring them in for educational things with residents, and just keep going on the trajectory that we have been on. We wanted to develop a community manager's handbook. We did that in 2023, but it was pretty granular. And now that we've had Lauren and Quincy come on in 24, and just looking at how we've had so much work hands-on with property managers to get things really, a lot of practices and standard procedures in place to make sure that it's consistent across the properties. We're re-looking at that this year to try and make it more of a comprehensive policy where everything is one place and more of a standard operating procedures than a very granular step-by-step process. Or at least toe the line between the two. This one, I'm zooming in, is the top item here. So I'm looking at action items, research processes to measure quality of life. This is something that was a big deal in 2022. Like, how do we, when we did those, what is the term? The not inquisitive conversations, anyways, it was more of a please tell us what you think about LHA. And we wanted to figure out how do we measure that. It was a lot of qualitative information. And so this was something that was an effort in 22. Really what we have done is improved our coordination and relationships with BCHA and BHP through our work with the Regional Housing Partnership and through HSBC committees, making sure we talk together about our voucher programs. So while it's not necessarily outreach to other housing authorities to see how they measure their quality of life, we've started the building blocks to getting those relationships together, and then we can use that to keep moving on efforts like this if we want to in the future. Again, here's more about measurement for resident quality of life. I think that the measurement of quality of life, a measurement tool, I think that's worth considering. Is that what we really want? Because I think what we could do is look back at 22 and that effort versus now and see that sea change, but how do we measure that? I think that's something we gotta think about. I feel like I don't wanna measure something that says, we have less complaints than we did before. That sounds, it sounds a little stale. So we gotta think about what we want here and what we're really trying to be able to communicate out to the board, to you, and to the public. Okay, and our second major goal, it was really about data and making sure that the decisions that LHA the board makes are informed based on current information and really making sure we're using data as the foundation. So most of this is really complete. It was about doing a planning grant that we have completed, which led to our housing needs assessment that then helped drive, for example, Ascent, telling us that we needed units with larger sizes and that type of thing. So I think this is something we're living and breathing every day. The city side, we have a data dashboard now that shows housing stats on a real-time basis that LHA can also tap into to just see how things are shifting. So I think this is really kind of completed, and now we just live it. Goal number 3 is increasing access to rental assistance through vouchers. This gets a little granular at the time too, because we're talking about changing the way we manage the voucher program to improve financial performance and access to, for example, admin funding to help keep the voucher program stable for the long term. But then also trying to see if we can grow our voucher program. And I'd say since 2022, we have looked at every NOFA, Notice of Funding Opportunity, that has come out about vouchers. And there has been 1 or 2 that are new programs that were not a good fit for Longmont. Everything else has been just new additional funding for existing programs. So none of them have resulted in LHA diving into new programs like VASH or the Move to Work, ones that exist in BCHA and BHP. Those programs specifically we were looking out for have not come about. So we have not, and then we hit the funding shortfall issue in 2024. So that kind of changes the name of the game, period. So at this point, it's not really about finding new voucher programs. It's more about making sure we are able to manage the ones we have. And because we had project-based vouchers available that we awarded out, make sure we move to complete those commitments. And then in 2026, then we'll have to see. That's when we would like to be able to look to expand the voucher program again, but it depends on HUD funding, which I'm not super hopeful about at this time. What we really have talked about doing, but then again, the shortfall issue, and then also a lot of our regional work has focused on the Prop 1B in 2024 and getting those distributions finalized. That what we have not done is ramp up our discussions with BHP and BCHA on our process around port-ins, which is one of the big issues that we have been talking about. We didn't really face that head on in 24 because of other things that rose to the top that had very tight deadlines, like Prop 1B and funding shortfall. So that's something that we still have on our outlook for the future. And then supporting staff with Yardi trainings, that's something we've really done a lot of work with, and I'm gonna save that because I think that comes back later in terms of our internal processes. All right, moving down. So voucher program. Okay, this is, I kind of skipped ahead, but this is watching for NOFA still. But like I said, there's other challenges that I think would hit that as well because of HUD's situation. Implementing our locally funded voucher program. This has been implemented. We've been up and running. We became 100% leased up at one point in 2024, and now we're just in that regular turnover process. We've got human services funding that's sufficient to cover that program through 2025. So I would say we've hit this one. Oh, I should say there's one of our goals on this, something that we would like. It is very clear that those that are in this program could use dedicated supportive services. There's not a funding source for that right now, but we have a lot of things in mind that we're thinking about for supportive services into the future that we're just kind of wrapping our arms around because we've got multiple needs out there for that. And we've seen when we brought clinicians into the suites how effective it was. So that's one of our wish list items as well that we can want to keep working on. Let's see, there's more VASH opportunities. We kind of talked about that one already. Implement a practice to overissue vouchers to pad the time that is taken for applicants to respond to documents. This, conditions have changed on this one. We did implement that practice. We were starting it and it was helping us make sure that we had timely lease up of our vouchers. But when we started to have to implement our PPVs for Village first and now for Ascent, that we stopped. We do not right now, we're not issuing new vouchers. We don't have a wait list right now for vouchers. That is something that we won't be able to do until we fulfill those PPV obligations. So that is more of a 2026 thing, subject to the funding. So that's where we are for those. Now we're into development. Goal number 4 is all about development. This gets really specific to projects, and we've completed a lot of this. So the first one was Zinnia. We finished Zinnia. At this point, we're just going to continue to work with our project partners through the operational phase, build community, and ensure everyone can maintain successful tenancy as much as we can. Here's Chrisman. Chrisman completed construction and leased up in June. So at this point, we're in the same bucket, just in the operations, maintaining our partnerships, helping out to make sure everybody has a smooth tenancy and smooth operations on the management side. Here we're at Ascent. So we've talked about that. We've got construction will be going through 2025. We'll continue to coordinate closely with that development team and then work to commit to fulfill the commitment for the project-based vouchers. We'll be doing staff hiring to prepare for the lease up in the second half of the year so that we're ready to rock when it all opens in January. Affordable assisted living. We talked about this last year that we did a lot of efforts to figure this out in 2022 and 23. But the broad consensus across everybody who has tried this is that the system is not really built for it at this time. But we still, that doesn't mean we just let it go. We still want to look for other models and see if we can figure out a different way to help serve the need, which is really those that are living in our senior properties that really need to be in assisted living. How do we help them transition? The cards are stacked against them at this point, but we are trying to still work with partnerships where the opportunity arises. We're trying to still hear about how Medicaid plays in. That's another issue on the supportive services side as well. Like, is Medicaid ready for this? And I think that Medicaid is one of the most likely answers, and it needs to get sorted out on the federal level and maybe state level. So we got our eyes on that. Moving down to, we're still in development. This is still assisted living. Here's our home ownership. So we've talked about True North. And last time we also talked about engaging with LHA residents to see if anybody's ready and interested in graduating out of subsidized rental housing and into that. So that was one of those major goals. So we're making good headway here. Okay, the Royal Mobile Home Park land. This is 3 or so acres of developable land on the site of the former Royal Mobile Home Park. We were not going to start this one, but we did start looking at concept plans because the city is working on the Kaufman Street extension through that area in preparation for the First and Main Transit Station. And then right now, we're also talking with the First and Main teams throughout the city to make sure that we're tying into that. There might be some storm drainage issues we're working through, and we're just working to make sure that we plan ahead and how this all comes together. Here we are converting HCBs to PBBs. We've talked about that %. And then we're down here into preservation. So you all know the status village in 2025. We're just going to keep tab on warranty items and make sure everything's working okay. I will say on that, you may have seen a Times Call article about the elevator being down.
I didn't turn that in, by the way.
What is ironic is the day that they that ran, we already had the contractor scheduled. It's happening on Friday, so we could have avoided that maybe, but it is what it is, and that's all right, and it's good to talk our issues out with the community, but that is happening. We went back and forth with the contractors because we were trying to figure out, did the wiring get reversed during construction or did it not? And our best forensic investigation showed that it was wired correctly. The elevator just went down, and it was unfortunate timing, unfortunate overall, and we got it sorted out and it's getting fixed. But we did do our due diligence to try and cross every box to make sure that it was not a warranty item.
Well, I think the issue just still underscores that we're still seeing in certain areas supply chain issues. And we wanted it fixed as badly as the residents, but
the elevator company was waiting for the parts.
The part was the issue in getting the part, and so I think it's kind of like everything else. When I talked about the flood, the further you get away from the flood, people forget about it. The further we're getting away from the significant supply chain issues, people think, oh, it's not like we're going back to normal, but we're not. There are still very specific pockets where supply chain issues are a problem, and theoretically it could get worse when we look at the tariff conversation and things like that. So, just need to hang on.
So would you consider running for president? You're so good.
Don't put it past him. Moving on for the 202s as a goal on here, and I've already kind of mentioned we're really diving in 2025. We're going to get a consultant on board to help us plan out the size of the project that we want and the timing. We know that we need to convert over to that using that RAD program within 90 days of the property budget approval, which is in July of each year. So that seems to be that spring 2026 is a likely time frame, but we have to see how big of a rehab we want to do first and confirm that. So Hearthstone and Lodge are in the HUD 202 program, which is they're completely 100% HUD vouchers, all limited to 30% income. But HUD controls the budget and a lot of other ins and outs to it. But the biggest struggle we have is we cannot do what we can do at other properties because HUD limits how much we can spend at the property. They don't have money for resident events, and they're limited on being able to bring in supportive services, that type of thing. And so they have a program. This is one of the last properties in this old HUD 202 program. And there is a program out there to do a RAD conversion, which converts it to basically PBVs, but it's out of that HUD control of the budget. So this would be beneficial really for property operations. It's a little bit early on the general horizon for like a rehab. Generally, when we're controlled by tax credits, the rehabs are spread out more than this because they were only built in about 2012. I think there might have been one like 2010, 2012. Is that right?
I think one was 08.
08?
Yeah.
2012. So that's why we have to decide how much of a rehab do we want to do. It doesn't need certain things. It needs a couple of big ticket items, but are we going to do a big one because we might not have another opportunity for 20 years or not? But really the main reason for doing it is operations and finances on the operations side.
So the biggest complaint that they seem to have over there is the windows.
Yeah, that's on the big ticket items. It has to happen no matter what. Windows, and there's a siding problem. And then our ADA unit kitchens are not compliant and they need to be reconfigured, so it's a bigger ticket. Those are the ones we know of for sure. So, and then let's see. Re-syndication of Aspen Meadows neighborhood was put on this list in 2022. We've learned a lot since then. We know that AMSA and Village had extenuating circumstances that allowed us to re-syndicate those tax credits on a pretty short timeline. AMN is most likely not going to pass that test, and so the 15-year compliance period ended in 2024, but CHAF is really looking for more of the 20 to the 25-year mark, so that puts us out at 2029. So this is not something we're jumping on right this second, but it will be in the 5-year horizon for sure.
If we keep getting increments, then eventually I'll be on.
I know, it would be. I mean, it's already a smaller rehab. It's only 28 units. And yes, we have done a lot of rehab already. Okay, moving down, I'm just going to try and speed up a little bit. And group, this one is partnerships with service providers. We've already talked a lot about this in the quality of life section above. Really, but a couple of things is doing a formal survey of residents to see what needs they have. I think we've done a great job of bringing in partnerships based on what we just know that there could be useful, but that is something we could do as a resident engagement thing still in the future. And then working with, some of this does tie to assisted living, or at least trying to get people help through TruePace to help on Medicaid reimbursables and that type of thing. TruePace has come in and done engagement sessions, so this is a little bit more expanded than that. Working with NextLight, we have already brought in NextLight to do engagement on their low-income families incentive programs to really get very low-cost internet. We had talked about doing bulk agreements in the future. That's still a possibility, but right now, while they have this program, it's kind of covering the need at the moment. But we'll keep it on there as a lookout for if things change in the future.
NextLight's a good one to kind of put in context to what I was talking about earlier about controlling our own destiny. So NextLight, when we started our program for income qualified individuals, there was actually an offset from the federal government that came in, so they would let you recover your full rate. You would just, individuals would pay X amount of dollars. That program actually went away. But as we knew it was going to go away, we started building within our financial model a way to replicate the program to still do the same thing, but to maintain the financial integrity of NextLight. So that's actually a really good example of kind of where my mind's starting to sit, is take the same concept, but how do we apply it here and everything that we're doing, because what we don't want to do, and I'll be very critical of that, is the way they've structured that 202 program is that it's a program that's destined to fail. because they don't take into account out of control inflationary increases. And Kendra will go to them and say, landscaping just costs more. And it's always a fight, but you never get enough funding from that into a 2 program to do what you need to the properties. So at the end of the day, it's the residents that end up suffering for this. And I just think, you know, I would never do a 202 project.
I think it's.
I mean, but even if it continues, there's a reason that it's because it's just poorly designed. And I think those are some things that, you know, I probably do agree with some of the things that are being said and changes that need to occur because we just, it's an incrementalism that we're seeing there and they never reimagine how to do things to do it better.
So I'm just going to paraphrase. It's looking to expand the partnerships that we've created. If you keep going down, there's a lot of partnerships around assisted living units. I'm not going to rehash that. And then early childhood education programs, nail that at a cent. And then we continue to work with children, youth, and families during the engagement. Once the building's complete, we're bringing in services and engagement on that side. And still open to future ECE opportunities as well. And then finally, establishing partnerships to develop homeownership pathways. We've already mentioned that as well. So I think what we can see from this is is a next step because we've made a lot of progress here and a lot of this is now, okay, we've done it, let's keep rolling and building on what we've created. Is that in the future we're going to want to come up with some broader visioning because this was much more of a step-by-step action plan. And then I would say in 2025, outside of this, more on the implementation side from staff, 2025 is the year where we want to get policies nailed down, procedures nailed down, make sure properties all have access to the same materials and information, share across our property managers. On the voucher side, we want to kind of improve some of our processes. If we can't do supportive services for voucher holders yet, we at least want to engage better and more. So Tracy's got ideas for doing a quarterly landlord and tenant newsletter, doing briefings for when families have children that are entering adulthood, because we've seen a lot of people starting to get out of compliance because they didn't understand what they needed to do when that happened. It's really about the engagement side and education side for them. And then internally, getting our everything very stable, predictable, using Lauren and Quincy's expertise, which we didn't have prior to 2024, to bring in new perspectives and figure out what could we change to make operations run smoothly and that type of thing. So I would say I'll pause there because I don't want to go too much longer. We are going to present a version of this to the board next Tuesday. So if there's anything, and we're going to consider adding on as a goal, entering the middle income housing world, like Carol was talking about. So between those kind of things, if there's anything you want to make sure we highlight or think about, if we were going to expand this list before we do a bigger, broader visioning exercise, we would love your input.
I'll get it over.
I do think the assisted living is going to be really, really hard. And it's just because of the reliance on Medicare. And in that world, so to do affordable assisted living, Medicare plays a big part in this, and we've talked to some folks that kind of work through those issues. And we all know where Medicare and Medicaid is, but Medicare specifically on kind of the same oversight in this. And I think the thing that we learned really as part of when I was in it was the way the state structured the program for supportive services. There was a Medicare component or Medicaid, and maybe both Medicare and Medicaid.
Primarily Medicaid, that might,
But
anyway.
built into that, and we're seeing this on the operational side, built in to kind of help create another funding stream for the supportive services piece, and it's just not coming together. And I think doing anything and predicating it on that type of funding is dangerous. For any number of reasons, but even under the system, it just, I think what Molly, they said they were supposed to have it ready by now, and it's not ready, and then some of the changes that they thought were going to occur in the previous administration, some occurred, but not all, in terms of what it would allow you to charge out to Medicaid, and so there's a fairly significant headwind on this, and I just think seeing that the assisted living piece is going to be a heavy lift.
All right, 7, resident quality of life. Quality report, so we got 10 minutes.
Good morning, everybody. We'll start with the occupancy report. Put it up. Okay, cool. So at Aston Meadows neighborhood, Summer has 4 vacants over there. 2 of them are PPVs, and then the other 2 units that she has applications on them. So she is working towards getting people filled in those units. That was neighborhood. For senior, she has she's waiting on applications, so I guess she has 3 vacants there. She's going through her waiting list. With the PBBs, we've been very communicative with Shelby and Quayla on kind of getting that process going, but when it comes to PBBs, we just have to wait. We can't fill them the way that we want to fill them. So we are in communication with them, and we should have an update on those very soon. Briarwood's something that I will have to do. We are looking to hire a property manager over at BOM, so I've been trying to utilize my time there with having to also take care of my responsibilities. So I will look into those as well. They're 250%, so they shouldn't be that big. Well, it should be that big. So I'll give you guys an update on that next week. We have Fall River Spring Creek. John has applications on all of those. He has 4 vacants at Fall River. All of those have apps. He'll give me move-in dates this week on those. And then Spring Creek, he has 119 has an application on it, and 204, they just moved out on the 31st of last month. So he's working on those as well. At Hearthstone, Andrea has 1 vacant there. The lady passed away. We had to reach out to her sisters to get a document signed so she can release the unit to us, because there's still furniture in there, but she wanted to donate them to the residents. So once we get that, her sister Gracie replied to me today and let me know that instead of filling it out and emailing it back, she filled it out and put it in the mail. So we'll wait for the mail to show up, and then we'll get those done. At the lodge, she has 1, and she has an application on that one at the lodge as well. At the suite, so I'm gonna borrow you for a little bit. The suites. So we had an insurance adjuster come out a couple weeks ago, and I guess we're at fault, correct?
We haven't heard back.
We haven't heard back.
So what kind of transpired there is we have enough unit. They came in, demolished it, and what we found is Recycle did not put in their scope work to weatherize. When they took the P-tack off to weatherize those pipes.
So it was just a big hole to outside to inside. So it froze pretty much everything.
So without a maintenance tech on board, nobody knew that it hadn't been weatherized. Pipe froze, flooded the unit below it. We did issue an insurance claim, but they pretty much are kind of saying you're still liable to. So I gave them the information and all the details. So we're waiting to hear back if it's a claim or not, or if we have to do the cost of it.
So that's luckily the unit that it flooded into. She lives in a suite, so it was one half that she didn't utilize at all, but she still has her half that she has all her stuff in, kitchen she lives in, so it didn't affect her quality of life. I mean, it did, but not to where we would have to move her out or anything like that. With the elevator being the way it is at VOM, those residents, I have a plan to get everybody back here Friday. We have movers and transportation from, forgot the lady's name, but we'll be over at 10 o'clock Friday pretty much all day, just getting everybody moved back. And you two know, you both know a whole lot, and I appreciate both of you. But the elevator will be fixed today.
Oh, today.
Today.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah. They started yesterday.
That was such a smooth way to tell us we're wrong. I love it.
Just tell us we're wrong.
So yeah, they'll be finished today. They replaced the oil tank yesterday, which went really smooth. And so he said he just has to fix some electricals and it'll be back up. I told everybody Friday just because I want to get everybody riled up. So Residents Day Friday, but it will be back up today.
They should be happy.
Yeah, and with Kat still living on site, if this matters, she will be moved out by the end of the month. I don't know if we're going to change that unit, keep it a manager's unit, or figure something out on that. So we'll have that back coming here at the end of the month as well. So, yeah.
That was occupancy and property updates pretty much, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking any more updates. And then, you know, we had another property manager put a notice in, so we're getting ready, we're preparing for that as well. And then we had John as assistant. Her last day was last Friday, so Lauren and I need to sit down. Well, Lauren as well. We need to sit down and figure out what Zinnia wants to do as far as Catherine, the owner. If we're going to have another assistant, or we're going to have a full-time property manager, which we pretty much need another full-time manager there. So we're going to sit down and see what we can do.
Yeah, Zinnia is posting. So we had a meeting with them last week, and we're seeing very similar issues that we saw at the suites. So Molly and I are in the process of working with our finance team. So the council authorized 50% of the marijuana tax, the increment, to go to housing, and that was done before we had all the other funding sources coming into housing. And so we're going to shift that funding around, so instead of it being utilized for construction, as part of construction projects, we're going to move it more into the operational side, because we now have the money that we're putting into the attainable housing fund. We have $1 billion in affordable. We have the fee in lieu that's now coming in that wasn't coming in. And then we did get a direct allocation of 1B. So we don't, $175,000 when we're talking billions. The best use is to be over here on the supportive services side. And we're going to augment support services for that area, well, just generally, but we're going to upgrade the position that the Housing Authority budgeted as a clinician 1. We're going to use that money to bring a clinician 2 because we can't hire a clinician 1. And then we're thinking we have enough money to do one more clinician in the system, and that'll let us start being a little bit more robust in terms of not only serving other properties, but also landlords that have vouchers in our system when they're dealing with issues, and so it creates capacity for us. But what's driving it is we're seeing the same issues that we saw at the suites, and they're getting the data on this, is that the majority of our issues actually are to a very specific group coming from a very specific location. And so we're going to make a run at the state with the same argument that we did with the suites, and that we're having to bring in additional local dollars in order to manage the situation there. And so we want the ability to pull everyone from the Boulder County system versus from the statewide system. And last week was an interesting week there, but it's that way every week. So, Longmont, the Housing Authority, what are they called? I was only calling Boulder, so.
All roads.
All roads,
So,
we're all in agreement, on this issue. Because it's turning into safety issues for staff. And so it's just a matter of us communicating with the state on this because, it's like Groundhog Day all over.
Are you seeing the issues with the tenants that they pulled from the state list? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Gathering that data,
But yes.
yes.
initially, yes.
Yeah. And I
I
think
wondered
it's,
about that when they're, I mean, you're pulling from, I could see that being a problem.
well, it is because, I mean, you're taking someone from completely away from whatever support system they have. And in some cases, that's good. But it's just consistent, this issue where you're seeing, when we pull them from our system, we already have established relationships with Lead Corps, with different case managers, and so when they move into the housing, granted, we have issues, but we're less likely to see those issues because we have the established relationships as we're working to get them into housing, and so they just tend to be more successful. We don't know what's happening on this other system in terms of what they're doing with these individuals, and so it's a classic case of moving someone into the housing that's probably not ready. So we're going to be tackling that fight in the coming weeks.
The majority of the residents there have never lived in there. So they're just throwing them there and it's chaos. I look at it like, I know you said you would never do a 202 for the same way at our PSH. It's a liability on your asset. So we spend a lot of money over there at Zinnia, just in the 2 months that I've been here, hearing things for attitudes and just not listening. So
It's certainly, I wouldn't call it not a moneymaker, that's for sure. It's more about community benefit, and we knew when we got into it that, I mean, we've done PSH, we've seen how things go with the suites, and we now know a lot about what it takes to manage that, and it takes a lot. It takes commitment, effort, energy, and money. So I think that's a learning process for many.
Yeah, and you have to have the ability to hold people accountable.
which we can't do.
And it's a struggle to do that. You have to have the ability to really evaluate the tenant selection as you're coming into the process. Because there were individuals that they flagged as like, this is going to be a problem.
I'm going to court for one, so I'll find out the status of them. He's the one who done it last week. So figure that out.
So, I mean, that's what we've learned is you've got to be very judicious on the front end. You've got to be very active once they move in, and you've got to have accountability in the system. I mean, I think those three things is really what changed the suites. And the way the system and the funding mechanism that came into this is set up is it makes some of those areas really challenging. And for us, I think we now know how to do PSH. And, you know, I think we struggle with, I'll just say, I mean, people making rules that have never done this work. And then and for us, we have to ensure that it's successful. Because what we don't want is it to not be successful and then create a broader stigma in terms of just affordable housing generally, because we deal with that now. And so that's kind of what we have to do, and that's going to be our discussion with the state, because I'd love for the mid-level managers to make these rules to come down and spend a week.
Yeah, or even a day. And I think we're unique that we've seen it. We see how it works on the development side. We also see how it works on the operations side. A lot of people are on the development end, and then that's like out of their wheelhouse, and they contract that out somewhere else. And we see the full picture. I don't think every community out there gets to see that. And so we're very well informed on how hard it is and how important it is, but also you got to do it well, or else it is easily could become a big problem.
And that was the thing, you've been in coffee conversations at the suites, where when we first started it, I probably could be accused of being uncaring, but what I said was, here are the rules, you need to follow the rules. If you don't follow the rules, we'll do what's appropriate. We have to ensure the safety and security of every resident in this, and so just because you want to do it doesn't mean you can. And it took us about a year and a half to really have that resonate. And I think people know now, you don't follow the rules and you do it, we will do what we need to do. And I think that was a big part of getting our arms around that facility. And you've been there a lot, so I don't know.
So I guess the question now is, we've passed our 11 o'clock time here. And I know that we still have some things to go. Are people okay with us going another maybe 15 minutes to kind of cover these things? I hate to cut everybody short, but we're going to go back to 2 hours.
Okay. Where's the rest of it? Isn't there another piece of this report missing?
I'm so sorry.
Is there another piece of this report missing?
Which one?
The big plans?
Oh, the square, at the bottom, yeah.
Is that the financial report or the?
Yeah, she was doing the, at the bottom.
But it may be just because it's February, maybe not the
I wonder, is it just the printed version or is it in your?
I think it's that information that Lauren added. Yeah,
Okay.
which is the
It's
cost.
basically just a rolling total of the
Yeah.
vacancy loss.
Oh, bad move-outs and evictions?
It was just a vacancy loss, like,
Yeah,
she's been putting in the corner, it's fine.
it's how much.
Yeah.
It was like how much was a rolling total of what the down unit cost was.
Is that?
It's okay, we only need to
Okay.
waste time on it right now.
Okay. Kendra, are you property only financial and voucher?
I am. So I did send you all a new AR report via email. I saw mine was doing a print screen and missed the bottom part of September to give you the totals. But the AR aging, this always happens at the end of the year. We do a big write-off for those entities that had meth and had a lot of costs and been sent to collections. So in September, we had a balance of $89,000. In December, we had a balance of $60,000. And most of that is current tenants. So it's $50,000 for current tenants. But in September, you saw $52,000 in past tenants. So it's basically just writing off those core balances. I don't see any problems thus far other than the usual. Tenants get evicted, they get charges on their ledgers, we never hear from them, we send them to collections, and collections can't buy them. That's kind of just been what's happened for our particular portfolio. As far as the financials go, I mean, I think our biggest thing we need to work on in 2025 is our vacancies. Because the vacancy losses were over budget almost on every single property except for the Hearthstone Lodge. Those properties, they're a well-oiled machine, I would say. When they have vacants, they have such a waiting list and people are ready to move in. And we usually Andrea doesn't have any struggles with finding somebody right away and getting things turned over. So I think that's our biggest proactive piece we need to do for 2025 is keep those vacancies down. The other is basically the write-offs. We did budget this year for them, and basically it's more like a wash because you boost up your revenue for the expenses that these tenants are probably going to see out of the ledger, and then you do the exact same amount to write it off because that's usually what ends up being the case. It's rarely that we get a repayment plan. It's rarely that we get any funding from these, unfortunately. We had some insurance proceeds, and that was for the very last tranche of units at AMN, where we still had enough insurance. And so that's pretty much the only insurance proceeds we had this year, even though that was a claim prior. We haven't had any insurance claims for 2024. And these are just the properties that we haven't got through LHTC and LHAs. The Hearthstone saw some pretty big cost financially for appliance replacements. They were having a lot of appliances that were going down, P-Tech units, stoves. But luckily, admin had some cost savings enough, so we're we were still over budget. For the vouchers, I know that's not the last report that you guys have, it's kind of the math. But luckily, we did not end in shortfall at the end of 2024. We were $24,000 short. And so what that means is we not only used all of our budget, we used all of our reserves, except for $24,000. So we'll go into the new year with a little extra, but they're still expecting us to be in shortfall, mainly because we have those PPP vouchers that we need to also add at the end of this year. Or have we got a determination on when it's going to be leasing up?
January. Well, we'll start the leasing process before, but doors open in January.
So we are not vouchering up. We'll take any voucher that comes off. It's going to be kind of put aside, and hopefully with the new reduced 2024 market rates, we won't see as much increase going through. I mean, there's still some people that weren't even at, or that aren't even at the 2024 market increase, but some of them are, but they can't go over. So if they're already over, they're kind of there's nothing we can do. We can't go around that.
Sarah.
Pass the baton.
All right, as far as calls for service, every property is basically a 0, minus the suites, which we only had 7 calls and 3 welfare checks, so 10. And then Zinnia, just double that. We had 18 calls and 6 welfare checks. Pretty significant calls at Zinnia, like felony menacings and not good stuff. I have not had patrol ask me yet what's going on there, so we still keep going. They do know that we get calls for service, so they know it's not in the crime-free program, but they just know that the information sharing is very important, especially for the accountability piece that we're still working on. Michelle Goldman, our fire marshal, Village on Main requested a evac conversation, so she's going to do that in March. Our core paramedic had reached out to do some, for the community health program, he wants to do some health prevention education, like fall risks and stuff like that for our senior property, so that's going to happen in April at our coffee and conversations. And our cameras are getting provision today. They're in the state of Washington. And I'm still sending can you give me a projected delivery date? I did that the other day. And I did do another walk at AMSA yesterday with Valtech. We wanted to make sure we had the right camera counts, and I'm glad we did because the last design was about 2 years ago. It was a little bit outdated. We needed to update it. And we have different cameras that we're going to be using, so that was good. And then Lauren and I are working on the SOPs and for the meth detectors, and we've added some information to the meth addendum for residents, so we should have that finished up by next meeting, so we'll have that on the agenda. And it has to go through Tim and a few other channels, but we should have it completed by then. That's all I have.
Harold, did you have anything else? Okay. Anybody else want to ask a question or comment or anything? All right. So the next meeting will start at 9, and it will be Tuesday morning as usual. So need a motion to adjourn. Jenna? All right, meeting's adjourned.